Hello, my name is Mike Ryan. The name of the show is Jury Duty and Make a Difference on BNN, the show that should answer all your questions about the one-day, one-trial jury system. Our special guest today is Cherise Perry, Senior Manager of Support Services for the Massachusetts Trial Court. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And today we're going to talk about something that's not really jury-related. We're going to talk about court service centers, which is kind of a new innovation in the trial court. Cherise is a graduate of George Washington University, earned her law degree at Suffolk University, and she worked in private practice with the focus on family law, probate law, and real estate law. And then while she was at the Volunteer Lawyers Project, she represented low-income clients in family law and guardianship matters. She's also an adjunct professor at Bunker Hill Community College. She serves as secretary for the Mass Bar Association's Black Lawyers Association and is a board member for Hip Hop, which is a private youth nonprofit organization here in Roxbury. And she came to the trial court in early 2014. So what exactly is a court service center?
Well, a court service center is basically a combination of multiple types of spaces. So in Boston, for example, the Court Service Center is a huge space with a variety of rooms, computer access, a small play area, multiple tables for either private conversations or kind of out in the area, out in open conversations. And basically the Court Service Center's model is really to provide a place for litigants that can't afford attorneys. And so a typical day is really someone that needs to file for divorce, or they need to respond to an eviction matter, or they're just having difficulties obtaining child support, filing a small claims. Right now, there's really not a place for those people to go. Legal aid is kind of inundated with a lot of clients, and they don't have a place to go. So the court service centers have staff attorneys, managers, legal aid clinics. It's just kind of a combination of multiple things in one place to help the self-represented litigants. And
why were they created? What was the impetus behind the court service centers?
In 2007, 2008, the court noticed that there was kind of a plunge and a decline in the financial markets and so forth, and a lot of people just couldn't afford attorneys. And what was happening is people were trying to navigate the court system, and they didn't know what they were doing. They had no legal education, they were limited English proficient, they may have low education levels, mental health issues, and they were coming into the courts, filing any paperwork that they thought, not following kind of the court rules, and it was creating court clog, and people just weren't happy, and they were not satisfied, and they were frustrated. And so what the courts did is they put together a committee back in 2013 to explore court service centers and self-help centers in different states. And then they came together and said, you know what, we need to do it here, but let's just expand upon it a little bit more than they do in other states. And they put together a plan and said, let's start helping people.
So when you were brought on board, your mission was to create the court service center at the Brook Courthouse, correct?
Yes.
And now that just didn't happen overnight, correct?
No, it did not.
You had to carve out a space somewhere in the courthouse.
Yes, so before I started, there was a court service center committee, a much smaller committee that consisted of local advisors, court departments, community organizations to really say, where do we need this space and what are kind of the big picture items that we need in the space. You know, we need large space, we need a place for children to come, a place that maybe you can get water, a place that's going to provide language access. And so that group really went out, figured out where they were going to have these spaces, and then allowed the local committees to submit proposals to the executive office of the trial court. And then Chief Justice Carey and Harry and that committee sat down and they decided which were going to be the first two locations, which was Boston and Greenfield. And when I came on, it was, this is the big picture of what it looks like. Now take your small space with the white walls and green carpets and figure out what it looks like and how you want that to happen.
So you had no template, you had no guide.
There was no blueprint, not one at all.
So besides, where exactly is the Court Service Center in the Brook located?
If you go into the Brook Courthouse through the front door, you take the escalator or the elevators up to the second floor, and we're in the left rear corner. So we're close to juvenile court, clinic, the Department of Children and Families office, and Boston Municipal Court's probation are all kind of located on that second floor.
So it's pretty easy to find.
Yes, absolutely.
And what are the hours of the Brook Courthouse Service Center?
The Brook Court Service Center, as the other ones, is 8:30 to 4:30, and all of the court service centers close from 1 to 2 for lunch.
So, okay, so you're allowed to get lunch. So
Yes.
now to staff this court service, you had to go out and do a lot of outreach to get people to staff the center, correct?
Yes. So I was hired individually, as was the Greenfield manager, and a lot of what I did was to kind of use my resources and my relationships and networks that I had with the Bar Association, Legal Aid, Volunteer Lawyers Project, Greater Boston Legal Services, the law schools. Prior to that, I had really, even in practice, had supervised a lot of the interns. So I had a lot of different contacts at the law schools, and I sent them an email, a kind of a cold email, and said, we have this new program. I don't know how it's going to run. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how many litigants are going to show up, but I am passionate about this, and we are going to need help, because as soon as people know that there's free legal help, the people are going to come.
So how many people on a daily basis work at a court service center, roughly?
Right now, the court changed their model, so it's a 2-staff person model. There's a manager and there's a hired staff attorney. Everyone else is volunteers. And so on average, there could be 4 or 5 people, and that allows us really to kind of manage the crowd. I think that if we had closer to 6 or 7, the wait would be a lot shorter. But even on days that we have legal clinics through Volunteer Lawyers Project, we could have 10 attorneys there, and it's still very, very difficult to kind of manage, because there are more people that need help than there are actually people that can provide it to them.
About how many people on average come to a clinic, say at the Brook?
It's probably about 40 to 50, depending on the day. Clinic days, there's usually more people. Mondays, there's usually more people if the situations happened or emergencies happened over the weekend and they're coming in on a Monday.
What's the kind of issues that people need help with?
Typically, we're probably about 80% probate and family court. So the majority of the litigants are trying to figure out how to file for divorce, how to request custody, how to get guardianship of their grandchild. We've noticed a spike in the opioid addiction issues throughout the Commonwealth, and there have been a lot of guardianships filed, as well as guardianships of adults. Issues with the Department of Revenue, either child support, incarceration issues, so trying to do modifications and address those issues. So that's a big bulk, but we also do a lot in the housing court. So we see litigants that are either trying to respond to an eviction matter, or they're having issues and they've asked the landlord to, repair the leaking, faucet, or fix the windows, or they have a big hole in their ceiling that hasn't been replaced yet. So we see a lot of those as well.
Now, what about those people who may be language impaired? They may not have a fluency in English. You're able to accommodate them.
Well, the trial court has taken a really aggressive approach to language access, and part of that is to, one, provide interpreters to litigants at the actual hearing. But Access to Justice and that committee really looked at what does access look like, and does it begin when you first walk in the building? And so what we try to do there is let all the departments know that if people that need language access, they can come down, and what we use is a system called telephone interpretation, and we use Language Line, and what we're able to do with that is to call a number, give the trial court kind of password, and then they'll put an interpreter on the phone, and we can discuss what the litigant needs remotely.
Now, you deal with a lot of pro se litigants. Now, I throw that term up, but what is a pro se litigant?
So a pro se litigant means a variety of things to different people. Typically, it's a person that does not have an attorney. Some people will call pro se litigants self-represented litigants. Some people call them underrepresented litigants, because I think the reality is some people with enough of the tools, you put enough tools in the toolbox, they can kind of take that and they can represent themselves, and they have enough education and you've empowered them to really do what they need to do. There are people that, even if you gave them the tools in the toolbox, have other issues that would not allow them to kind of represent themselves. And that might be mental health issues, that might be cultural issues, it might be low literacy. So we just, we try to take everyone as they come, and spend a lot of time looking at what organizations are available, what are the outside resources, what legal aid offices focus on certain areas that we can send referrals to. So that's been really great because sometimes we know someone needs help, and we can call a legal aid office and say, can you take this, or at least do a walk-in type of consultation and see if you're able to provide the representation.
So you offer free legal information, but not legal advice. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And some people don't know the difference of that.
And what would be the difference?
So legal advice is basically advising someone about what their best options are. Legal information in the court service center and the position the court takes is that we can't tell people what's best for them, but rather we want to give them neutral information about how the court system works, what do the rules say, what's the court process. So for example, someone walks in and says, I want to file for divorce. I have not seen my spouse in 10 years, but this is the last address that I have. I have the marriage certificate, and I live in Boston. That's someone that knows exactly what they want. They just don't know either how to fill out the form or what the process is. We explain it to them, explain publication, or bring in the paperwork to the sheriff, and they go through those steps, and they get a hearing in 6 months, and the judge says you're divorced. The other people are, they've been together for 10, 15 years. One party has disappeared. They were the sole supporter for the family. They're not really sure what to do. They don't know if they go in and file for divorce, if the what the other party is going to do, and they're really struggling with what to do. They need a lawyer that can give them advice to tell them these are the steps that you should take in terms of making a decision to file for divorce or not file for divorce.
What are some of the kind of forms that are found at a court service center?
So we typically have court-prepared packets. So many of the probate and family court, for example.
Per department?
Correct. Yeah. And so every court department has an idea of, and they've put together packets of what is required in order to file, let's say, a small claims. They have the small claims form, but then they also have a defendant's verification of address. So if you walk into Boston Municipal Court, that's what they would give them. So we keep that in the court service center. There's a lot of one-page housing forms that we also keep in the court service center. People that are looking for Department of Revenue Services, we have those applications that we help people complete in the court service center. Custody complaint packets, divorce complaint packets, guardianship packets. We've kind of identified what are all the forms that we really know that people are going to come in for, and we have those. And if not, we just walk up to the registries.
Do you and your service center managers meet with a lot of the court staff to discuss what is handled?
So the most important part for the court service centers are, one, they're a new program. We are servicing all of the court departments, and not every lawyer or manager or staff attorney that comes in is going to know everything about everything. And so what we've all done is put together advisory committees that consist of sometimes outside court departments, but primarily local court offices. So there's typically a representation from juvenile court, district court, municipal court, family court, housing court, and you typically meet about 3 times a year, maybe more, and they're able to say, this is what's working, this is what's not working, do you think this is what you could do? Or it gives us an opportunity to say, it would be great, we get a lot of questions about this, it would be great if you tell us where the courtrooms are for traffic hearings or mental health clinics, and now there's the Veterans Court. So it's a great place to kind of get everyone there and talk about how the court service centers are doing. Now
there is now more than 2 court service centers, correct?
Absolutely.
And they are where?
So the first 2 is clearly Boston and Greenfield, which is way west, and then north. And the other 2 are Worcester and Lawrence, and they had soft openings in September, at the end of September. And 2 more will be coming, which will be in Springfield and Brockton.
Brockton, so that's good. That's good to know. Now, kids can come into the court service center, correct?
Yes.
And you're able to accommodate little kids, right?
Yes. So all of not that it's a daycare.
No, that's for sure. Yeah.
But so what we do is, I think people have families, and when you're in need or you come from low income and poor communities, it's not always easy to just say, can you watch my child so I can go to court? And so every court service center has a very small play space with, some kids' toys, books, chairs, coloring books, things like that are at least keep a child occupied for a short period of time to allow either mom, dad, grandma, aunt, uncle to kind of be able to come and sit down.
And you have computers on hand, right? When people need to use computers or print materials out, they can do that?
Yes, so the computers are great because sometimes people need legal resources that are available at the law libraries. And we're able to go on the computers, chat with law librarians. Sometimes they're able to send us emails, so there's no restrictions on what sites we're able to go to. Sometimes we need to do research. A litigant might need to know where the sheriff is located in Alabama, and we're able to find that, print out information. The judges love it because if a litigant comes in and says, "Oh, I forgot something," or I didn't bring my pay stub, and the judge says, "Oh, well, you don't have your pay stub, can you access it electronically?" "Oh, sure, go down to the Court Service Center and print it out." So it works.
What's your busiest day at the Brook?
Our busiest days equally are Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And you were telling me that on Tuesday you have a guardianship clinic. What does that entail?
So my background, as you mentioned, was probate and guardianships, and I worked at Volunteer Lawyers Project, and part of that was to run the guardianships clinics. So I went back to them and said, I know the guardianship clinic runs in the hallway. Would you like to run it out of the Court Service Center to give kind of more privacy and a better space? And so what they do is they come in from 9 to 1 on Tuesdays to run the guardianship clinic, and they bring their own private attorneys. They screen litigants for eligibility due to their federal funding. If they're eligible, they'll sit down with the attorney, they'll do the paperwork, and then many times what they'll do is they'll refer it to a private pro bono attorney through Volunteer Lawyers Project.
And you mentioned something to me about passports.
Yes.
How does Court Service Centers get involved with passports?
So what we often see, and we haven't figured out how to kind of deal with it, but there's certain times a year where we see an influx in people trying to apply for passports. And what has happened is they've applied for the passport, and the passport office has said, we need some documentation that shows that you have the authority to obtain a passport for your minor child. And because of that, they don't have a court order if they've never had any interaction with the court, or perhaps their order says they have custody, but it doesn't actually say that they can get a passport. And so many people are coming in a week before they are leaving to go on vacation to say, I need a passport. And the difficulty is that the court has all these court processes and procedures that you have to go through, and many people, we have to tell them that you're not going to be able to get a passport today.
On Wednesdays, you have Family Law Clinic and Pro Bono Appellate Clinic. What are those?
Yeah, so Volunteer Lawyers Project expanded from their guardianship clinic to now include a family law clinic. And what they do, again, is have another group of pro bono attorneys that come. They sit down with the litigants, they go over the forms, and the hope a lot of times is to be able to refer it to their pro bono panel. And the appellate clinic was a 6-month pilot program, also through Volunteer Lawyers Project, that will be ending soon, which will be on November 18th. And that was an opportunity. There are no legal resources for people that need help with appeals. And many of the justices and the staff in the appellate court said, how do we provide assistance to them? And because the court service centers were new, we were seeing a lot of people. They said, well, maybe the court service center is a perfect place to set up shop temporarily and see how many people will come in that either need information about how to file an appeal, what the process is, and possible maybe some limited representation to get them through the process.
Thursdays are very busy for
the court, but not us.
Right. But do a lot of people come in? That's eviction day generally for the housing court, correct?
Yes. So most of the time we see people either after they've had court, or sometimes they're coming in for questions about what's going to happen during their court proceeding, or they need some help to prepare for court, or they didn't like the judgment or what happened at court and they're trying to understand what was going on. But the majority of the people on Thursdays are actually in court, because probate and family court, or more so Department of Revenue, has their block day as well, where they do reviews and follow up on any of the child support related matters. So Thursdays are very busy in the Brook.
Very busy. Now your job also touches on trial court law libraries.
Yes.
What exactly, are they different than going to a regular public library?
Yes, so the trial court law libraries are actually a really great resource, and what we've seen is that a lot of people use them in modern technology. They're using them by finding them on the internet or through the court's website, and you have the opportunity to walk into a law library. They're free. You can get a free membership, but it's all law books. And so if you have someone that's trying to navigate the court system or try to do research, the law librarians typically have about 2 people on staff, and you can go there, you can ask them for help. You have free access to LexisNexis and Westlaw. There's mass practice. But the great part that we like at the court service centers is that, one, we collaborate with them. And, if someone comes in and it's a more complicated issue, we can say, okay, we're going to help you with this. Now we've identified it. We're going to walk you over to the law library, or we're going to put you on the computer. We're going to chat with the law librarian. A lot of times they know about out-of-state resources. And so we've had people come in and say, the child actually lives in New Hampshire, but I live here. What can you do to help? And we can talk to a law librarian on the computer and say, person's here at the court service center. He's trying to figure out what to do. Child lives in New Hampshire. And they can say, oh, well, here's a link. They have an online chat system, or they have telephone numbers you can call. And it's really just, otherwise, this person probably would have walked into court. Someone would have said, New Hampshire, go to New Hampshire. And, if this person's poor, perhaps he can't go to New Hampshire.
So it's another resource for the court
another
service center.
resource.
And you also touch on judicial response system. What exactly is that?
The judicial response system is the overnight kind of judges communication system. And so what happens is overnight, people don't realize it, but there are judges that are always on duty, almost 24/7. And so as soon as the courts close, there are certain judges that have these kind of like little flip phones. And if something happens at 10 o'clock at night and there may be a domestic violence situation, and that's usually what the calls that they get. There's a domestic violence situation, the police are called, and they need to get abuse prevention order for the person that's called in. They're able to call the judge on that phone. The judge talks to the plaintiff or the moving party, and if abuse prevention order is what is granted, the judge will grant it over the phone.
So will they have a 2-week rotation on that?
I think it's a month.
It's a month.
And then they switch judges, and it's done by regions, and we keep data on that. And so what we try to tell people in the court service centers are, sometimes they may not meet the standard of an abuse prevention order, or something has not happened, or maybe there's a fear that something may happen in the future, but it has not. We're able to let people know that even though it is Sunday morning and you can't walk into a court, you can always walk into a police station and say, this has happened. I think I need an abuse prevention order.
On your brochure for court service centers, it says that court service centers are walk-in clinics to help people navigate the court system. Would you say court service centers serve as a compass to the courts?
I think they do. We say walk-in because when you come into the court service center, one, we want everyone to complete an intake, because it helps us identify how many people are coming into the court service centers, what departments we're serving, what do they say they need help with, and what are we able to provide. We keep data on the languages that we receive requests for, and it helps us figure out how to pool more resources into one area or not, or how to change the system, or should we be creating checklists or more information pamphlets for people when they leave. But it's a bridge between people walking in and what they actually file. Some people, after we talk with them, they're not ready to file. Maybe they have to do their own investigation. Maybe they have to, go get that marriage certificate because they were married in Las Vegas, and now they've got to contact the Las Vegas County clerk's office and say, can you send me? And some people just, they're not in the right court, and otherwise may have filed something or spent a lot of resources. So we try to make sure we steer people in the right direction and give them kind of the guidance that they need.
Well, we've run out of time. We'd like to thank you at home for watching Jury Duty Make a Difference on BNN. Just remember, if you have any questions about your jury service, you can always go online at majury.gov or call the Office of Jury Commissioner toll-free at 1-800-THE-JURY. It's 1-800-843-5879. Just remember, you do make a difference. Please serve when called. It's important to all of us. Thank you, Sharice.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you at home.